So, this is a deeply personal story we're diving into today. This isn't something you'd read in a standard history book. It comes straight from one man's memory, from his own writings. It's a story all about loyalty, about profound loss, and about a connection to a homeland that just doesn't fade, even in exile.
Wow, that quote right there really sets the tone, doesn't it? Those are the words of KB Chauhan, and they capture the very heart of his story. This deep, deep love for a country he can't go back to, and a memory that's both a comfort and, well, a source of incredible pain.
So, who was this man? Well, KB Chauhan wasn't just any citizen. He was a true patriot, a public servant, a member of Bhutan's own National Assembly. His story is about a man who gave his country everything he had, only to have it taken away from him. To really understand the tragedy of his exile, you first have to grasp the sheer depth of his devotion. And I'm not talking about just passive loyalty. This was active, it was selfless, and you can see it in these incredible acts of personal sacrifice he made for his king and for his people.
Okay, so our story starts back in 1978. It was the first National Day celebration ever held in southern Bhutan. Chauhan and his family, they decided they had to prepare a really special offering for the king, a gift that would truly represent the people of his home region, Dagapela.
And get this was no state-funded tribute. This was an ivory plaque, inlaid with real gold and silver. And as Chauhan himself writes, it was paid for by the sweat of their own labor. They didn't take a single coin from anyone else. He presented it to the king himself, a moment he remembers so clearly, with the entire hall just erupting in cheers. But, his devotion went way beyond symbolic gifts. When he had the king's attention, he used his voice to fight for his community. He asked for real, life-changing things: a new school, a temple, a road to connect them to the rest of the country, and farmland for people who had nothing. And then he made one more, really bold request: for the king to come and personally visit his home region of Dagapela.
So, fast forward a few years. He's now a member of the National Assembly, and his sense of duty has only gotten stronger. He felt this pull to do something even more meaningful to honor the king. He truly believed that if the king was happy, then development and prosperity would come to his people.
And so, once again, he paid for a remarkable gift right out of his own pocket. This time, it was a metal plaque with the king's photograph, decorated with auspicious symbols and inscriptions in 4 different languages, all of it set inside this beautiful, gold-painted silver frame. For him, this was serving his people by honoring his king.
When you lay out the timeline of his journey, it's just so stark, it's shocking. In 1978, he's presenting that first gift. By 1983, he gets that royal promise of a visit. That promise is fulfilled, and it's this huge celebration. And then boom, 1990, exile. It just shows how quickly his whole world was completely turned upside down.
But before all the tragedy, there was this moment of pure, absolute triumph. It was the fulfillment of that big request he'd made way back in '78. The king was actually visiting Dagapela. And for Chauhan and his people, this was everything.
And he describes it with these simple but incredibly powerful words. It wasn't just a political event for them. It felt spiritual, heaven on earth. Just think about that. A moment of pure joy and validation for his entire community.
I mean, you have to picture the scene. It was just one of pure elation. The people were so overcome with emotion, they literally lifted the king up in their arms. Young girls, including Chauhan's own daughters, welcomed him with garlands. And the king, he rewarded their devotion. He remembered Chauhan's plea for education and announced that a new Sanskrit university would be built right there in Dagapela. What an incredible moment.
And then, everything changed. The story takes this sudden, absolutely heartbreaking turn. We go from the peak of that celebration right to the depths of despair, all driven by forces that were way beyond one man's control. So what happened? The government injustice and oppression he talks about was part of this huge, tumultuous period. In the late 80s, Bhutan's government brought in a one nation, one people policy. The idea was to create a single national identity, but it enforced the dress, customs, and language of the majority Drukpa culture, which really hit the southern Bhutanese of Nepali origin, the Lachempas, hard. This led to protests, a brutal crackdown, and eventually the expulsion of tens of thousands of people from their own country, including this incredibly devoted patriot. The scale of his loss was just devastating. They took everything from him: his ancestral lands, which could have supported his family for generations, all of his property, and his personal diary. He left with almost nothing,
Just a little bit of soil from his home, his memories, and a heart full of tears.
And he talks specifically about the loss of that diary. He calls it the mirror of my life, a complete record of his entire existence, from A to Z. Taking that wasn't just losing a book, it felt like they were stealing his recorded history, a piece of his very identity.
Which, brings us to today. The story doesn't just end when he leaves, it continues, right now, in exile, where memory is pretty much all he has left to hold on to. From his new home in Arizona, his perspective has really widened. He writes not just for himself, but for the hundreds of thousands of others who shared his fate. His personal tragedy, he realizes, is part of this much larger collective story of displacement and loss. And even in exile, his service to his people continues, not with silver frames, but with words. He writes about his wishes, for the elderly suffering in refugee camps to just be allowed to die in their homeland, for political prisoners to be set free, and for some kind of answer, some kind of justice for what happened to them. And in the end, his own question just hangs in the air, completely unanswered. After a lifetime of service, of devotion, of love for his country, this is the one question that still haunts him. And it's a question that's not just about politics or history, is it? It's about loyalty and justice, and what it truly means to lose your home.